Magandang gabi po, mga katipon sa Pilipinas. Ito po ang ating katipunan. Muling sumasa inyo mga tagapakinig upang magbigay ng mahalagang impormasyon, magbigay liwanag at higit sa lahat, may makinig sa inyong mga daing at kuro-kuro hinggil sa mga problemang patuloy na nagpapahirap sa ating kalagayan at kabuhay. Sa susunod na oras, sisikapin po namin ipaliwanag ang iba-ibang bahagi ng ating ekonomiya at ang mga mabibigat pang local and international issue na may malaking epekto sa ating buhay at kinabukasan. Ito po ang inyong katipon na si Butch Valdes kasama ang ating co-host na si Valdes at iba pa nating mga kasamahan sa Save the Nation Movement at sa Partido Politikal Katipunan ng Demokratikong Pilipino, ang KDP. Narito po kami lahat nag-aanyaya sa inyo makibahagi sa ating talakayan sa pagsusurin mga kasalukuyang problema at paghahanap ng kaukulang solusyon. Okay, ngayong gabi po, hindi tayo masyadong magbabago dito sa ating tema ng mga nakaraan na linggo. Inarapat namin na subukan, ipahayag sa inyo ang iba-ibang aspeto ng kasaysayan. Karamihan po yung nangyayari po sa bansang Amerika, sa mundo. At pinipilit natin pong paliwanag in such a way na maintindihan nyo din kung ano yung nangyayari dito sa ating bansa. Because alam nyo po, minsan meron tayong tendency to think like the Philippines is the world and the world is the Philippines, period. No? Wala tayong pakialam sa mga nangyayari sa labas at kung ano man yung mga developments doon, kung may gera o sakuna o kung ano pa, no? Hindi natin masyadong binibigyan pansin at nakatutok lang tayo, lalong-lalo na dito sa mga ng Pilipino, itong mga favorite natin, itong politics, di ba? Excited tayo pag parating na ang halalan at nakakalimutan na po natin na nasa kalagitnaan tayo ng pinakamalubhang krisis sa buong mundo. Hindi lang sa buong mundo, sa buong kasaysayan ng ating bansa. No? And yet, we seem to forget all of these things because there is a lot of political bickering and mudslinging going on around, especially the politicians. Ang gusto lang po natin magawa sana is we can focus on some issues that are very important na madalas kinakaligtaan ng ating mga namumuno. They forget about history. They forget that certain solutions have been made during history and certain problems were also encountered. No? Nakakalimutan po ng ating mga liderato ito at ang kanilang mga ginagawang desisyon ay kadalasan na may kamalian dahil hindi nila tinitingnan ng kasaysayan ng mundo. na kung paanong nahanapan ng lutas itong mga ganitong klaseng krisis. No? So ngayon, we'd like to talk to you about the very important name. It's called Roosevelt. No? Sa kasaysayan po ng Amerika, ang family name na Roosevelt ay makasaysayan. No? Because there was a president one time, I think somewhere in 1911, somewhere there. Ang pangalan niya, Theodore Roosevelt. Tapos nagkaroon din ulit ng isang presidente, pinsan naman niya, 1933 hanggang 1945. Ang pangalan naman niya is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Gusto natin sanang umpisahan dito sa periods na ito para makita po natin kung paano nag-evolve ang kasaysayan, nakasama din tayo. Tatandaan niyo po, mga first decade of 1900s, 1901, ay ang Pilipinas po ay isang colony halos sa pagkaari ng bansang Amerika na noon. No? At nagkaroon lang tayo ng independence in 1946. So 1901 up to 1946, that's a good 45 years na hawak tayo ng mga Amerikano. Ano pong nangyari dito sa mundo, ano po ang nangyayari dito sa period na ito, no? Dito sa mga kapanahunan na ito. Ito, you want to add something?
Yeah, it's good to review, no? So tulad ng sabi ng chairman natin, the period that was we were under the Americans. 1901 to 1946, kailangan pag-aralan natin. We have to see sino yung mga namumuno, who were the principal decision makers in the US, who was the driving force, what was their policy, and hopefully in the show we will be able to discuss this and give a light, medyo papaliwanagan namin, sa kaya namin, yung mga leaders ng bansang Amerika at the time and what their policies were towards the Philippines, particularly right after the Philippine Revolutionary War against Spain. Tapos yung right away, may kalaban ng Amerikano, and then the American period of occupation. And up until our independence in 1946. And dalawa pong pangalan ang lumilitaw dyan during that period. Roosevelt po yung dalawa. So tonight, we were looking at how we can discuss this further. And kumbaga, try and give more detail to yung mga beyond what we read or what we learn from our history books, what we learned in school about these two presidents, because it involves directly the Philippines. So I guess tonight, we have a first video. Sino ba tong si Teddy Roosevelt? Now, ano yung background ni Teddy Roosevelt? Teddy Roosevelt became the US president in 1901 after po na-assassinate o pinatay si William McKinley. Okay? Si William McKinley ay namatay nung September 6 after his assassination, and si Teddy Roosevelt po yung vice president. So naging presidente siya, 1901. September 6, 1901. So after that, siya na po ang namuno in essence. Siya na po nagdikta ng policies dito sa Pilipinas. But before that, he was also the Secretary of Navy during the Spanish-American War, which involved Cuba and the Philippines. So, yung mga colonies ng Spain. So, he was the Secretary of Navy and siya po ang pumupursige at tumutulak sa Kongreso. And first, he was a congressman, and then as Secretary of Navy, tinutulak niya po si McKinley na makipaggera sa Spain. Kasi si McKinley ayaw. Sabi, wala naman kaming pakialam dyan sa Cuba o sa Pilipinas. Bakit gusto natin makipaggera? And one of the main things na nangyari is, so sa US kasi, ayaw nila makialam sa mga politics ng ibang bansa at the time. Si McKinley po to. So kahit pinipressure siya ng mga tao sa kanyang gabinete at sa Kongreso na kailangan daw i-liberate natin yung Cuba. Kailangan daw, kawawa daw yung mga Cubano, yung mga people in Cuba. Kailangan bigyan natin ng American brand of independence and democracy. So, si Roosevelt po, si Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, ang isa sa mga parang leading promotor nitong gera. Pero ayaw. So while the U.S. Congress was debating on this, whether they should go to war, may nangyari po sa Cuba, yung isang battleship. I don't know if Ver can show a battleship Maine. Tawag Maine. Naka-anchor yan sa may malapit sa Cuba. So I think it was Guantanamo Bay pa nga. Sumabog po to. Sumabog at may 2,000 American soldiers ang nasawi. So sabi nila terrorist attack daw to ng Espanya sa kanila. So ngayon, punta sila sa Kongreso at sabi na tamo, mag-gera na tayo. Kasi binomba tayo ng Espanya. Siya po ang nagpasabog ng ating battleship at pinatay yung mga Amerikano. Until today, marami po nagsasabi na para siyang inside job. Kasi walang pruweba ng Espanya. Sabi ng Espanya, hindi kami yan nagpasabog. Pero hindi na nakinig yung mga kongresista sa United States. Sabi nila, gera na tayo. At doon na, the rest is history. So, what we want to do first is have a 5-minute video on Teddy Roosevelt. Sino ba siya? Ano yung background niya? And then we can discuss his policies, discuss what he did, especially that episode under him, yung Balangiga conflict and the Balangiga bells. That's a very contentious issue in Samar. So, if we can play the video first, so get to know sino ba tong si Teddy Roosevelt, and then chairman can come in and discuss.
Roosevelt was born on October 27, 1858. He was a sickly child, and his asthmatic condition left him in bed during his early years. This made him unable to attend the local school, and as a result, he was homeschooled. When he wasn't studying, he was busy with naturalism, ornithology, hunting, and taxidermy, to name just a few. Roosevelt's father didn't cut him any slack because of his lack of health. Rather, he built his son a gym and had him lift weights and box. Gradually, this consistent exercise helped Theodore overcome his physical weakness. In 1876, he was admitted into Harvard College as a freshman. He actually was not an exceptional student and was viewed as eccentric and odd. However, he did rival many of his classmates in physical activities and ended up being runner-up in the Harvard Boxing Championship. Theodore met Alice Hathaway Lee in his junior year at Harvard, and in October of 1880 they were married. The same year he joined the Republican Party, and on November 8th of the next year was elected to the New York State Assembly. He wrote his first published work, The Naval War of 1812, which would establish him as a serious historian. In 1884, his firstborn daughter was born, but tragically, his wife Alice died soon after from Bright's disease, along with his mother on the same day. This devastated Theodore. He postponed further political involvement and withdrew to his ranch in the Badlands of Dakota. It was there that he became a prolific hunter and a deputy sheriff for the county. Not until 1886 did he return to his home in New York City, after a severe winter wiped out his herd of cattle. It was also later during this year that he remarried. He ran as the Republican candidate for mayor of New York City in 1886, portraying himself as the cowboy of the Dakotas, but he lost the race to Abram S. Hewitt, the son-in-law of former presidential candidate Peter Cooper. On May 5, 1895, he became the police commissioner of New York City and earned acclaim by fighting police corruption. He was appointed to the post of Assistant Secretary of the Navy by President William McKinley 2 years later in 1897. The Spanish-American War broke out during this time. Not being one to avoid the action, he promptly resigned and led a small regiment in Cuba known as the Rough Riders, earning a nomination for the Medal of Honor. After the war, he returned to New York and was elected governor in a closely fought election. Theodore was elected vice president on March 4th of 1901, but he didn't keep that position for long. 6 months later, President McKinley was assassinated, and Theodore took the oath of office at age 42. During his presidency, he passed significant laws, such as the Meat Inspection Act of 1906 and the Pure Food and Drug Act. His policies were openly progressive in nature, and he is famous for having coined the phrase, square deal, meaning that the average citizen would get a fair share under his policies. His foreign policies were characterized by his slogan, speak softly and carry a big stick. His chapter in life as president came to a close after serving 2 presidential terms by 1909. Soon after leaving office, he embarked on a safari trip to Africa. He and his friends killed or trapped more than 11,397 animals. They captured a vast variety, ranging from insects and moles to hippopotamuses and elephants. These animals were mounted and sent to the Smithsonian, but because of the huge amount of specimens collected, many were sent to smaller museums. He returned to the U.S. in 1910 and was immediately unimpressed with the policies of his presidential successor, William Howard Taft. As a result, he decided to run for president again, but was denied entry into the race by the Republicans. He then formed his own independent party, the Bull Moose Party. While campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on October 14th of 1912, he was shot by a saloon keeper. He declined medical attention and instead delivered a scheduled speech which lasted 90 minutes. There were 3 contenders in the election that year: Republican Taft, Roosevelt, and Democrat Woodrow Wilson. While he beat Taft, he lost the election to Wilson. The life of Theodore Roosevelt was a remarkable one, and his accomplishments nothing short of astounding. He was one of the first presidents to fly an airplane, go underwater in a submarine, and have a telephone in his home. And not only was he the first president to be awarded the Nobel Prize, but also the first American. He authored 26 books and contributed over 1,000 articles for magazines. He continued to be an avid adventurer, and in 1913 embarked on a major expedition to South America, where he contracted malaria which weakened his health. On January 6, 1919, Theodore Roosevelt passed away in his sleep at the age of 60. It was said that death had to take Roosevelt sleeping, for if he had been awake, there would have been a fight. Although some of his political policies and actions remain the subject of controversy and critique, his incredible courage and stamina, his adventures, and his honest and forthright character and personality still continue to inspire us today.
Okay, so that was a brief history of Teddy Roosevelt. Medyo 5 minutes lang para at least alam po natin kung saan siya galing, ano yung yung buhay niya, and ano. Pero yung mga detalye po, of course, we will discuss ngayon, no? Again, we will remind you that he ascended into the presidency after William McKinley was assassinated. And this was right after or during the Philippine-American War. Okay, so
and that na ano lang ako Itos.
Yeah.
Itos baka hindi natin masyadong nabigyan ng pansin. Sinasabi, in the early part of Theodore Roosevelt, palagi siyang mahina sa eskwela dahil palagi siyang may sakit, no? At hindi siya talaga bumabagsak siya sa eskwela. Parang hindi siya masyadong sa academics niya, no? Pero habang lumalaki siya, meron siyang pinasukan yung ornithology, yung pag-study ng mga ibon, no? Saka etong taxidermy. Yung taxidermy, yan yung naglalagay ng you're stuffing animals that you have killed, no? Tapos ilinalagay mo na pandekorasyon sa bahay mo o sa ano man, no? Yun ang naging kahiligan nitong si Theodore Roosevelt.
Para siyang outdoorsy adventurer,
Mahilig
naturalist.
siya kasi, tapos naging mahilig siya sa hunting, no?
Right.
Kanya siya pinangalanan ng Teddy, no? Kasi mahilig siyang mag-hunting noon at dito sa lugar ng bansang Amerika, ang hinahunting nila doon kuminsan mga oso, mga bear.
Bear.
Kanya diyan nag-umpisa yung teddy bear, no? Kanya sa kanya Teddy, no?
So sa kanya nag-umpisa. Teddy bear.
Ang sinabi din dito, para hindi natin makalimutan yung personality nitong taong to. Nung siya, presidente na siya noon, no? Punta sila sa Africa, nagkaroon silang parang expedition. At nag-hunting sila ng mga mapapatay na hayop. Mga rhinoceros, kung ano-anong napatay nila, elepante.
Elepante, leon, gano'n.
Umabot ng 11,000 ang pinatay nila. No? Tapos, binalik nila lahat yan. Kung taxidermy siya, siguro, alam niya at pinastaff niya yan at pinag-distribute niya sa mga iba-ibang museum sa bansang Amerika. No?
Right.
Gusto ko lang yan, no, dahil lalo na itong mga environmentalist natin, no, siguro mapansin nila ito, no, na isang presidente ng Amerika, no, ganyan ang hilig at tinanggap naman ng mga mamayang Amerikano yung kanyang kahiligan. Tapos, pa siya, itinuri siyang matapang na tao. No? Nag-boxing pa nga siya eh. Nag-boxingero pa nga siya eh. At
ano daw siya? Macho. Lalaking-lalaki.
Nag-boxingero pa nga siya at lahat yun. Anyway, naging presidente siya. Sa pamamagitan ng pamumulitika. Kasi ang Roosevelt, pamilyang mayaman yan eh, no? Hindi yung kaparis ng mga JP Morgan o yung mga Rockefeller, ganyan. No? Pero mayaman yan mga Roosevelt na yan, no? So may kakayanan at may impluwensya dito sa New York. Kanya ang unang-unang napasukan niyang pang-Congress, no, ay dito sa New York. Ganyan yun eh. No? Kanya nag-umpisa siya dyan. Tapos, sabi mo nga, umakyat siya, naging Secretary of the Navy siya nung kapanahunan ni President McKinley. No? Tapos, umabot siya ng Vice President nung pinatay naman si President McKinley. Yung panahon ni Teddy Roosevelt, dito nagkaroon ng uprising dito sa Samar sa Pilipinas. At malamang si Teddy Roosevelt ang nag-utos na isubdue ang mga insurrectors.
Yan yung picture ni Teddy Roosevelt nag-hunting, sabi mo nga, Chairman.
Saan dyan? Pakita nga.
Ayun, sa channel. Nakita mo ba? Do you see it?
I don't see it. Anyway.
Okay. Yung meron siyang rifle tapos yung dead elephant.
Gusto ko lang nandun na tayo sa Samar. At dito yung pinadala nila yung mga ilan batalyon na Amerikano para imasakir yung mga tiga-Samar, no? Ang nasa ibang kasaysayan, ang namasakir lang yung mga tiga-Balanggiga, no? Pero ngayon, nakikita sa ibang mga historical documents, ang napatay daw nila is about 40,000 Filipinos covering the whole island of Samar. No? Yung Balangiga is just a small part. Tapos kinuha nga nila yung bells, no? yung pangkalembang, no? Ang tawag nun sa bells, no? Bilang tropeo. Dahil yung batalyon na yon nakuha nila, so inuwi nila yon parang tropeo, no? Na nasubdue nila yung mga insurrectong Pilipino. Ano ba ang pinaglalaban ng mga Pilipino, no? Siyempre, yung kanilang karapatan pang tao at ang kanilang kalayaan. No? Siguro, siyempre, mga sundalo ang namamahala sa kanila noong kapanahunan na yon, malamang meron mga oppression yan. Yung mga panggagahasa ng ating mga babae, no? Kasi silang may-ari ng Pilipinas, kaya baliwala sila. At umabot sa insurrection at lumaban yung mga mamayang Pilipino natin. No? At yung unang company, siguro mga 30 sundalo nila noon na gumagawa ng mga kasamaan sa mga ating mga kababaihan ay napatay. At dahil napatay ito, nag-utos si Theodore Roosevelt na isubdue ang insurrection diyan sa ano. Kanya mahalaga sa atin yan, iyang Balangiga bells, no? Dahil kinakailangan ibalik sa atin yan dahil ito ang ating simbolo ng ating paninindigan laban sa mga dayuhan na pumapasok dito at umaangkin sa Pilipinas.
Yeah.
So kailang dagdagin yun.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add yung background po. Sabi dito sa, siyempre sa internet ito, that Balangiga, what's known as the Balangiga Massacre, kasi marami pong ibang historians that dispute the word massacre, no? Pero kasi gera po to. So in the summer of 1901, ibig sabihin mga August, September of 1901, nung namatay si William McKinley from assassin, take over si Theodore Roosevelt, yung Balangiga conflict, Balangiga massacre was in 2 weeks after September 28. Pero before that, kasi nga gera at ayaw na ng revolution, di ba yung US, nakuha nila yung Pilipinas galing sa Espanya. Pero yung mga Pilipino, na iniisip na nila ang kalayaan. Pero nakita nila na hindi pala itong mga Amerikano at this time were going to give us freedom. Parang lumipat lang tayo from one colony to another. Yeah, that's a picture of Teddy and Franklin. Mamaya, pakita po natin yan ulit. But itong Balangiga Massacre, before that, sabi nila, yung utos sa kanila, utos ng commander ng US in charge of the Department of Visayas and responsible in Samar, nag-instigate sila kasi ayaw na nila yung nagre-rebelde. So sabi nila, tanggalin na natin yung mga nagre-rebelde, i-subdue natin yung population, yung Pilipino, para hindi na sila lumaban. So, nag-instigate sila ng, according to this, instigated an aggressive policy of food deprivation and property destruction on the island. The objective was to force the end of the Philippine resistance to American forces. So sabi nila, part of the strategy was to close 3 ports on the southern coast, Balangiga, Guian, and Pasay. Samar was also a major center for production of Manila hemp, which is the trade, which was financing Philippine forces on the island. So nakita ng Amerikano nito, so paano natin tatalunin yung mga to? Igutom natin, wag natin i-cut natin yung mga source ng kanilang support and the food going in and out of the island. So at the same time, they were also interested to control the hemp trade, Manila hemp, which was material that they use with cotton and all of that. So ito yung parang strategy. Abaka. So they were trying to subdue the resistance and control kasi sila na yung bagong colonial masters. So yung mga tao sa iba't ibang island nagre-rebelde. And that's what happened, yung balanggiga nga. But they were already pushing the local population to the brink. Parang ginugutom nila yung tao para mag-resist. Wag na kayo mag-reklamo, wag na kaming awayin. Kami na yung bagong masters. So yun yung nangyari. So na-ambush yung mga, I think, according to this article, 48 American soldiers. Tapos bilang ganti, nagsusunog sila ng mga town. Parang nagalit sila sa buong Samar para turuan ng leksyon ng mga Pilipino. So yun ang nangyari. But this was during the Philippine-American War, which happened right after Teddy Roosevelt also took over itong klaseng pagmamassacre. So may mga iba pang mga articles on this na parang narrates kung ano pa lang nangyari. Pero this was known in American history books as the March Across Samar. So this was really a military strategy to try and subdue the islands of the Philippines. Ganun talaga.
Gusto ko lang idagdag that there are many writings that identify Teddy Roosevelt as a racist, not just somebody that's yung hunting down. He likes to hunt down there are pictures of him hunting down the Bengal tigers and so on and so forth, mga lions and elephants, no? But he was also a racist kasi during the American Indian Wars, no, this was in the early 1800s, nung ganyan. Kasama pa siya doon. He used to say daw, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. No? In other words, ganyan yung kanyang pag-iisip, no, pagdating sa mga natives. No? So ang dala niya yung ganyang klaseng pag-iisip sa kanyang pagka-presidente. No, papakita niya yung muscle niya, yung meaning, yung lakas ng Amerika, no?
Yung pagka-macho niya.
Pagka-macho, para makontrol nila ang mga ibang bansa, katulad ng Pilipinas.
Right, so that was the policy of Roosevelt. Ano po yung so when Roosevelt took over, this was the time during the Philippines was occupied by the Americans. Eventually, hindi na tayo lumaban, wala nang resistance, and we capitulated to the Americans. So we became another protectorate, sinasabi nila, pero parang colony para sa ating mga Pilipino. Because maalala po natin, by this time, sawang-sawa na tayo sa the ideas, yung mga ideya ng freedom, mga ideya ni Rizal, mga ideya, mga konsepto ng self-government, nasa Pilipino na, nasa mga tao na pag-iisipan na nila yon. So they were already sold on the idea of self-government before the Americans came. Kaya may mga resistance pa. Tapos until Aguinaldo, nahuli nga. And during this time, Philippine-American War, alam natin yung yung General Luna. Diba? Yung ating bayan o negosyo, di ba, Chairman? Yan ang sinasabi ni General Luna.
Yeah.
Di ba? Bayan o negosyo. Yan. So, magandang sinihan po, magandang movie po yun. Panoorin po natin ulit. Pero it shows the kind of general, the quality of leadership that we used to have. Pero alam na po natin yung nangyari dun sa part of that history. So, moving on, Roosevelt was president until 1901 to 1910, I think, or 1909, 8 years. And then sumunod siya, then 2 more presidents came. In the meantime, the world was moving towards World War I already. 1914 to 1919. And the presidents following Roosevelt, kasi pagkatapos ni McKinley, yung turn of the century, 1898 to 1901, pinatay po si McKinley. Nag-iba rin yung policy ng Amerika. Si McKinley po kasi was a very believer in walang colonies, hindi kami makikialam sa ibang mga bansa, and he was he wanted to develop America much like Abraham Lincoln before him and Alexander Hamilton. Kaya nagpapatayo siya ng mga scientific centers, infrastructure, ganun ang pag-iisip ng McKinley. Nung pinatay siya, pumasok itong si Teddy Roosevelt at ang sunod-sunod na mga presidente after Roosevelt, mga 3 or 4 presidents after Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, ganun rin ang pag-iisip parang si Roosevelt. They wanted to build an American empire, kumbaga. Tapos yung gusto nila, free trade. Walang regulation. So kumalat yung pagka, how do you say, Wall Street, lumaki yung Wall Street, lumaki yung mga oligarko dyan sa US. During this time, na-establish rin yung Federal Reserve System ng United States, which we all know is the central bank system of the United States, led by yung malalaking bankero tulad ni J.P. Morgan. This is the time that they got big. Ito yung mga oligarko, mga bankero, mga financial oligarchs, mga robber barons, yung mga kinuha nila yung mga railroad tapos binenta-benta nila. Dito sila lumayaman, yung mga Rockefeller during this period. Rockefeller, si J.P. Morgan, tsaka si Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie of Steel. So ito yung mga sinasabi ng titans of business. Pero kumbaga, dito sila lumakas dahil yung mga presidente mahina. So pinalakas nila to. Until after World War I. You want to talk about, you want to say something about World War I? Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so punta tayo sa may isang presidente called Woodrow Wilson. And he was presiding over World War I, 1914 to 1919. Ito po yung ginawa na-discuss na po natin about World War I in our past episodes. This was led by Britain and other countries against Germany. And at the end, natalo po yung Germany. Yung US nagpapadala na lang tulong pero hindi naman sila masyadong involved until later. Kasi ayaw makialam yung US talaga, yung progreso ng US. Pero nakialam sila. Si Woodrow Wilson ang nagpatayo niya. Ang namahagi dyan because he was the American president. And then, after World War I, nangyari nga, kinuha nila yung mga industries ng mga Germany. Parang kinuha nila dahil pambayad daw sa mga nagastos ng nila sa gera, sabi nila sa Germany, akin na tong probinsyang to, akin na tong business nyong ganyan. So they stripped Germany of all their productive power. Parang punishment. Tapos naghati-hati na sila. Britain, France got the lion's share. Sila yung pinakamaraming kinuha. Tapos yung iba, dinivide na nila. Parang nanalo kasi kami, so kunin na lang namin yung yaman niyo. Ganun yung nangyari sa Treaty of Versailles. Okay. After this, there was an era of what they call easy money. Kasi po, ang ginagawa nila, pag nakuha nila yung isang factory sa Germany o yung steel factory, ang ginagawa ng mga bankero, sinesecuritize nila yung assets ng factory yun, tapos binibenta sa stock market. Okay? So they were actually taking advantage of Germany's loss in the war to make money. Ito yung mga bankero, JP Morgan at lahat. And they were selling it in the stock market. Oy, invest kayo dito sa stocks. Oy, malaki to. Invest kayo. Oh, okay itong Germany. So ang daming pupunta sa stock market na pera. Kasi imprenta lang sila ng imprenta. Gawa ng bagong Federal Reserve banking system. Pautang sila ng pautang. Yung mga tao naman gusto yumaman. Ilalagay nila sa stock market. And it was booming. It's sinasabi nilang booming up until 1929, where we had the Great Depression, precipitated by the crash during sa Wall Street. Black Monday ang tawag yata nila. But 1929, the Great Depression. Pero hindi lang po sa stock market ang nag-depress. Kumbaga, biglang nagbenta ng mga stock, bumagsak yung stock market. Pero before that, marami nang pong nagugutom, marami na pong walang trabaho. Kasi umiira lang ang espekulasyon.
Yung rewind tayo ng konti ito. No? Pagkatapos kasi nung First World War, no, 1919, no, natalo ang Germany, no. Ang mga allies noon magkakakampi ang France tsaka ang mga Great Britain, no, at ang Amerikano. Nung natalong Germany, ang ginawa nila, siyempre siningil nila ang Germany ng mga dahil natalo sila sabi nila, ikaw kailangan bayaran mo kami ng mga nagastos namin dito sa gera. Tapos siyempre wala naman pambayad ang Germany noon dahil natalo nga sila sa gera. Ang ginawa nitong mga bansang ito, lalong-lalo na yung England at France, kinuha lahat ng mga assets ng Germany. Lahat ng assets nila, pati na baka, pati na kambing. Yung kanilang mga railway tracks, no? Tracks na mga tsaka yung mga train, kinuha nila mga kung ano man, pati agricultural equipment kinuha nila. So parang inubos nila, nagkaroon sila ng garage ng Germany. Naubos talaga ang assets ng Germany para sa kanilang sariling kabuhayan. Tapos sabi nila sa Germany, Germany, natalo kayo sa amin, kanya may utang kayo. May utang kayo sa amin ng ganito. Wala namang pambayad ang Germany, tsaka wala silang kakayanan. Siyempre, dahil lahat na ng factories nila na dismantle na, kinuha na ng France tsaka ng ng England. Ngayon, etong mga Germans naman, siyempre talo sila, wala silang magawa kundi mag IOU, no? Yung sige, susulat kami ng kautangan namin sa inyo. Kailangan babayaran 'yan. Dahil dito at wala silang kakayanan. Ang nangyari, ang Germany nag-imprenta ng pera kasi yung pera nila wala ngang halaga, no? Wala pa silang talagang produksyon. This was called in 1922 the Weimar hyperinflation. Ang nangyari dito, for example, noong January 1922, no? Ata, no? Ang exchange rate nila noon, $1 is equal to 400 Reichsmark. 400 Reichsmark. Para tayo ngayon, $1, 50 pesos, di ba? Yung sa kanila noon, $1, 400 Reichsmark. Ang pera nila noon dati, Reichsmark. January yun. Pagdating ng December of the same year, ang exchange rate nila is $1 or something like 400 billion yata. 400 billion o 4 trillion Reichsmark. Yan ang tinatawag na super hyperinflation. Ibig sabihin na walang halaga yung kanilang pera. At meron tayong mga litrato dito, ewan ko kung hawak ng Iberion. Kung ano yung ginagawa nila sa pera noon dahil walang halaga. Pwede mong i-blow up yan na ang ginagawa nila sa pera noon, dahil wala nang halaga, yung mga iba, tinatali nila at ginagawang panggatong dahil malamig ang winter. No? Yung mga iba, lagay nila sa isang malaking truck kung mamamalengke sila. Dahil ang kinakailangan mong dalang pera pag mamamalengke ka ay kasing laki ng truck kasi walang halaga yung pera mo. Pinamimigay na nila sa mga bata ang mga Reichsmark at tinatali nila, ginagawa nilang parang laruan, building blocks. No? Sayang hindi mailabas ni Ber yung mga litrato nito dahil hindi niya. Ayan. Ayan, no? Kita niyo yung bata. Dinalaro nila yung pera. No? Dinalaro nila yung pera dahil walang halaga eh. No? Ano pa yung yung nasa ito. Linalagay nilang panggatong doon sa kusina nila, no? Yung papel na pera, panggatong, no? Meron pa bang iba? So, yan ang tinatawag na hyperinflation. Yan. Nag-imprenta ng pera, no? Dahil walang halaga. Dahil kinakailangan. Ngayon, this was probably the most devastating period of German economy. At yung mga utang nila sa mga bonds nila, yung utang, yung promissory notes nila sa England, sa France, saka sa Amerika, ay siyempre nakatutok dito sa kanilang kakayanan bayaran. Dahil hindi nila mabayaran yan, no? Yung utang yan. Dahil nga pinatay na ng Amerikano at saka ng mga British at French ang kanilang kakayanan para mabuhay, ang nangyari, yung bonds na hawak ng mga Amerikano na itrinetrade nila sa Wall Street. Kasi yung bonds, alam niyo yun, IOU. Meron kang papel, IOU ng Germany. Tapos sasabihin mo, ang halaga nito ay sabihin natin $10. Pwede mong ibenta yan ng $11, kikita ka ng $1 dahil merong spekulasyon na paakyat ng halaga nun. Hindi naman pwedeng umakyat ang halaga ng bonds na yon dahil nga walang kakayanan bayaran ng Germany yung utang nila. Kanya nagkaroon ng panahon na ang merkado, yung mga bumibili, parang tumataya sila sa bonds ng mga Germans at iba pang mga nakaakibat na mga securities. Alam nila wala silang makukuha, hindi nakikita. So nagbentahan ngayon sa Wall Street nitong kanilang bonds. Ang pagbentahan, mabilis yan. Kasi gusto mong ibenta na medyo kumikita ka pa ng konti. Kaya mabilis mong ibebenta. Tapos, kuminsan, alam mong nalulugi ka na, gusto mo din ibenta agad para hindi na masyadong malaki ang lugi mo. Para bagang yan, yung presyo nasa taas, pababang pababa at baba ng baba at baba ng baba. Yun yung tinatawag na 1929 crash ng Wall Street. At marami pong nalugid dito. At yung mga ibang nalugid yan, kasi alam nyo, parang casino yan. Yung humihiram ka para lang itaya dito sa mga pataas na halaga ng securities o ng bonds. At pag hiram mong ganyan, tapos tumataas, nung pala bumababa, hindi ka ngayon makababayad ng utang. No? At ito po ang nangyayari. Kanya ang dami pong nagpapakamatay noon sa Estados Unidos, sa New York at saka Chicago. Dahil baon na sila sa utang, tumaya sila ng malaki. Kala nila kikita silang malaki. Nung nag-crash, ito pong nangyari. Bagsak ang ekonomiya, bagsak ang stock market ng bansang Amerika, walang makabayad ng utang, pati na rin ang mga savings, yung mga iniipon ng mga mamamayan sa mga bangko, savings lang nila. Ginamit ng bangko para itaya dun sa Wall Street, nawala din. Kanya malaking depression ito, economic depression. More than 50% of the population of the US were unemployed. Kanya meron pa pong noong panahon na yan, namamatay po sa gutom sa bansang Amerika. Ito yung tinatawag na Great Depression. Ang huling panahon nito ni President Hoover. Umabot ka na ba doon kay President Hoover?
Hindi pa. I was getting to it.
Okay.
pero yun na yun. I mean, ganun na yun. Tama. So,
Pagdating ni
right.
President Hoover, Walang sinasabi si Hoover, kundi huwag kayong mag-alala, the supply and demand will correct itself. No? Huwag kayong mag-alala because the forces of supply and demand, which means yung market forces, will correct the economy. Yan ang mga favorite na sinasabi ng mga ekonomista. Hanggang ngayon, kung papakinggan mo itong mga ekonomista natin, ang kanilang Diyos-Diyosan, yung tinatawag na market forces. The market forces will correct themselves. But it never happened. People were continuously dying and more than 50% were unemployed in the United States. Pagpasok naman nitong isang tao, ito yung pinsan ni Teddy Roosevelt. Pero iba tong mag-isip, etong si Franklin Roosevelt. Iba siya mag-isip. Nakita niya na ang tunay na kalaban ng tao, yung mga oligarko na ginamit ang pera ng mga mamamayan ng Amerika para isugal dito sa stock market sa Wall Street. At nagkalugi-lugi lahat ng mga negosyo at pati na rin yung mga iniipon, mga savings ng mga mamamayan ng Amerika. Nagkalugi-lugi at nagsibagsakan. Ngayon, papasok ngayon si Roosevelt. Alam niya ganyan ang nangyari. Kanya pinasok niya ang mga bagong patakaran kung paano niyang babaligtarin ang sitwasyon sa bansang Amerika.
I just wanted to add po, kailangan medyo klaruhin natin also. Hindi lang dahil sa pagbagsak sa Wall Street ang naging ang nagbigay ng 50% unemployment. Ibig sabihin, yung economy ng Amerika kasi since after McKinley, medyo binigay nilang emphasis ang mga tinatawag na speculative and money traders. Maalala po natin na pinalitan nila yung sistema ni Lincoln at McKinley at Alexander Hamilton at ginawa nilang parang speculative. Leading up to kung bakit lahat ng tao was dependent on Wall Street and the oligarchs of America for jobs. Maalala po natin, bago dumating yung Franklin Roosevelt po, wala pong tinatawag na SSS. Wala pong tinatawag na labor laws. Walang ganon. Kung magtatrabaho ka, wala kang rights. Ang mga mayayaman tulad ni Rockefeller, tsaka ni Ford, pati si Ford, yung gumawa ng unang kotse, si Henry Ford. Tapos yung walang mga oras-oras yan. Magtrabaho ka, kumita ka. Saka wala kang protection. Pag tumanda ka na, wala kang SSS, wala kang Social Security. Yan po lahat nagiging problema ng Amerikano. At marami na pong, since less investment was into infrastructure sa US at the time, and government was favoring the oligarchs who controlled transportation, utilities, at lahat na. Hindi yung gobyerno ang nagme-may-ari. Lahat ng tao, yung survival po nila, food production, health, lahat, nasa pribadong sektor, hindi po sa gobyerno. And this did not come overnight. Since pinatay si McKinley, yung policy ng sumusunod ng lahat ng presidente, ganon. Mas pabor sila sa private business, mas gusto nila privatization, mas gusto nila yung PPP, public-private partnership, kunwari. Pero yung gobyerno humihina. Nag-take over na po yung mga oligarchy and the money changers in government. Now, this set the stage for when nag-crash yung Wall Street, ang daming nawala. Kasi wala na biglang infrastructure, wala na biglang money. Kumbaga, depende. Yung America became a nation dependent on this speculation. So I have a short video, I think, we have a short video on the Great Depression, just short. And then after that, we also have a video on Franklin Roosevelt and what he did, one of the great projects that he initiated right when he got into office. Pero gusto mo, Chairman, we can just show the Franklin Roosevelt kasi nandun na tayo.
Sige, yung Great Depression, I'd like to see
sige.
pictures.
Sige, yung Great Depression, short lang, Bear. Great Depression.
In the world of finance, we are often quick to forget the tragedies of the past, yet valuable lessons are to be had by exploring their causes and effects. After all, in a world of ever-changing rules, products, and services, history is the one constant that can guide us through the ambiguity. So let's take a 5-minute history lesson on today's Plain Bagel. The year is 1918, and after 4 years of conflict, the First World War is finally over. America has emerged as one of the victors and is about to enter a period of economic prosperity and cultural change known as the Roaring Twenties. Things start off pretty strongly as the post-war economy is seeing a boost. Troops are back from the war, delayed projects are starting up again, and hey, more women are entering the workforce, meaning that more people have a salary to spend, and companies are looking for a piece of the money pie. So in 1920, we see our first radio advertisement, and it seems to be working. Recent inventions like the vacuum cleaner and the electric washing machine are becoming hot commodities. And hey, since things are looking pretty good, the banks are giving out loans to everybody, meaning that even more people can buy the latest and greatest gadgets. Before you know it, everyone's getting a car too, Henry Ford's T-model to be exact, and with it, life is becoming a lot easier. Now you can do the Charleston across town and be home for your evening smoke. All of this is making companies very rich, and the average American is making good money themselves. In fact, people are starting to look for things to do with their newfound wealth. Buy another laundry machine? Nah. A new car? Don't need it. Oh, wait, what about investing? Yeah, that's it. After all, why be rich when you can be more rich? So the stock market becomes a pretty popular practice, and with so many people buying, investors are finding it very easy to make money on stocks. Soon enough, everyone thinks they're 1920s Warren Buffett, and I mean everybody. Cooks, shoe shines, taxi drivers, you name it, everyone is trading like a Wall Street tycoon, pouring their life savings into whatever security is hot that day. In fact, there's so much money to be made, people are taking out loans to invest even more, and banks are happily collecting the interest. By the way, those same banks are looking to invest more money too, and soon enough they begin borrowing money from customer bank accounts to buy stocks. But since things are looking up, no one's noticing, and overall things are going pretty well in America, financially anyway, and as we experience flapper culture, prohibition, and the rise of jazz music, people are making good money on the markets. By 1929, America's total wealth has doubled, and investments are up 218% since 1922. In fact, stocks are rising so fast, companies are having a hard time keeping up and justifying their stock price. Wait, that's not good. And hold on, production actually seems to be slowing down. Henry's not making as many T-models, and people aren't buying as many things. It looks like companies may have overestimated their growth, and now wages are falling. And all that easy to access debt? Well, people have taken out quite a bit, and interest rates are starting to rise. But wait a minute, the stock market is still up. That doesn't seem right. Even though the economy is looking worse for wear under the hood, investors are more or less ignoring these problems and buying and selling as if everything were exceptional. Sure, we see a few shakeups and close calls, but things are still largely positive, and people are still gambling on the markets. But over time, the voice of reason is getting louder, and investor uncertainty is increasing, which brings us to October 24th, 1929. Black Thursday, as it's called, the theorized start of the Great Depression. Investors have been royally spooked, with headlines reading,
"Prices of stocks crash in heavy liquidation."
And when markets open, they start to sell. And I mean sell. 12.9 million shares to be exact. A new record. And at opening bell, things fall 11%. People are selling so much that price tickers can't keep up with the volume, so people don't even know what their selling price is. And all of this selling is dragging the stock market down, erasing large chunks of America's wealth. And things are about to get worse. While markets recover later that day, come Black Tuesday, it's an outright panic. The Dow Jones falls 12%, and that record we set last Thursday, yeah, we just broke it again. The markets lose $14 billion in one day. Some shares are now worthless, people have lost their life savings, and Americans who borrow to invest are absolutely crushed. And so, friends, here we are. The Great Depression, the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world. The Dow Jones falls for another 3 years after this, losing 90% of its value from its high in 1929. Many lose their jobs as companies shut down, and it's not just investors that are hit. Remember that money the banks borrowed? Well, a bunch of it is lost in the markets too, and people are only getting back 10 cents for every dollar they had in their account.
Sorry.
Banks across the country shut down, and unemployment reaches its highest level in US history, 24.9%. By this point, breadlines, soup kitchens, and homelessness are common sights. Whether you invested, borrowed money, or even just held money in a bank account, the Depression found a way to hurt you financially. Times would be tough throughout the 1930s, and fiscal intervention from Franklin D. Roosevelt would do little to boost activity. In fact, it wouldn't be until the rise of the Third Reich in Germany that we would see an end to the crisis. You see, the Great Depression wasn't just felt in America. Rather, with recent globalization, its effects were felt around the world. And in the darkness, we saw the rise of Hitler, who used the despair of the German people as a rallying call, ultimately leading to the creation of the Nazi Party and the start of the Second World War in 1939. The war created jobs in America, ironically ending one tragedy with the start of another. Experts can't agree on why the Great Depression was as bad as it was, but there were valuable takeaways from the hardship. It demonstrated just how powerful the greed and alternatively the fear of the markets can be when they get out of control, while demonstrating the destructive potential of speculation and debt. Laws would later be introduced to safeguard financial institutions and deposits, and during his time in office, Franklin D. Roosevelt would introduce the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Securities Exchange Commission, institutions targeted at protecting the wealth of Americans that still exist to this day. Few are left who remember the hardships of the Depression, but we'd be foolish to forget the lessons it provided. After all, fear, greed, and speculation are far from dead. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to like and
It was very quick. Very quick.
It was a quick
Summary
of what they thought it was. I would have reservations in some of the statements being made at the time. No,
right.
But nevertheless, and it did not emphasize the real influence that Franklin Delano Roosevelt had in restarting the U.S. economy. No? Kasi pagpasok ni Franklin Delano Roosevelt, ang sinasabi doon 24% unemployment. That's much bigger than that. No? And the conditions were not just bad, they were very, very bad. When people start jumping off the buildings, no, because they can't pay their debt and are going hungry because they don't have jobs and cannot eat, no,
Right.
the situation is very bad. It's almost the same as what we have now here in the Philippines.
Right.
Pero ang entry ni Franklin Roosevelt was first, he stopped the idea of using people's money for speculation. No?
Right.
Kasi dati, pag pinasok mo yung pera mo sa bangko, ang mangyayari dyan, kaya nilang ilaro yung pera mo. Ilalaro nila kung saan-saan. Itataya nila sa stock market, ganyan. Pag nalugi sila, nalugi ka na rin. Meron at that time ganyan. Gumawa siya ng batas para hindi na po pwede yun. They cannot use people's money for speculation. If they wanted to speculate, they had to come up with instead of a commercial bank doing it, an investment bank will do it because you put your money in the investment bank precisely for them to play the markets. Pero yung mga nag-iipon sa mga commercial banks, bawal. Ito ang pag-uumpisa nung Glass-Steagall Act niya, no? Na pinagbabawalan na itong mga bangkong ito, mga commercial banks, pinagbabawalan silang ilaro ang mga pera ng mga mamayan sa sugal. No? Pangalawang ginawa niya, dahil nga napakabigat at ninenervyos yung mga tao, nagkakaroon ng bank run. Pumupunta sila sa mga bangko, linalabas nila yung mga pera nila. Pag nagkaroon ng ganyan sitwasyon, delikado, dahil mawawalan mawawalan ng parang kapital ang mga bangko na magpahiram para umandar ang ekonomiya. No? At saan sila kukuha? Ihiram sila siyempre sa gobyerno at mahihirapan ng gobyerno. Ang ginawa niya, sinabihan niya ang taong bayan noon, huwag kayong mag-alala, garantisado ang inyong mga pera na nasa bangko. No? Hindi mawawala yan at kung magsara yung mga bangko nyo, sasagutin ng gobyerno ang mga pera ninyo. That is one of the things that he had given. Pangatlo, yung mga tao, dahil walang trabaho, hindi sila makabayad ng upa o hindi nila mabayaran yung kanilang mortgages. Alam niyo po yung mortgages, yung utang nila dahil bumili sila ng bahay na utang, so hinuhulugan nila ito. Biglang nawalan sila ng trabaho. So itong mga may-ari o kaya mga bangko na nagpahiram sa kanila, kinukuha na ngayon yung kanilang mga bahay at pinapaalis na sila. Ang ginawa ni Roosevelt, pinagbawalan niya yan. No? Bawal ang eviction. Bawal ang foreclosure. Kung ano man ang kakailanganin na tulong ng mga bangko na hindi nila makolekta sa mga utang ng mga tao, sasagutin na naman ng gobyerno. No? He gave that guarantee to the banks so that they will not go into foreclosures or evictions. Ito ang mga unang hakbang na ginawa niya para magkaroon ng tiwala ang tao sa pamamalakad ng gobyerno at sa paggagawa ng mga hakbang para mabuhayin ang ekonomiya ng bansang Amerika. Meron pang mga iba.
Yes, I wanted to add, yes, on the finance side and the monetary policy side, yan po ginawa niya. Pero nakita rin niya po, itong si Franklin Roosevelt, sabi niya, paano ko bubuhayin ulit yung ekonomiya ng Amerikano? Paano ko bibigyan ng trabaho ang mga nawalan ng trabaho ng Amerika? So, he did it on both sides. Sabi niya, kailangan buhayin itong agro-industrial base ng Amerika. Tapos kailangan ibantayan natin itong financial side para hindi malula ulit sa speculation at hindi nagmamayari ulit yung mga oligarko. Kasi yung mga oligarkong yan, ang pag-iisip nila, profit lang ng profit. Wala po silang pakialam sa welfare ng tao. Okay, so he had to attack it from both sides. Ito yung maganda sa kay Franklin Roosevelt. So, because alam po niya, and base rin sa video, although hindi 100% accurate, sabi rin nga sa video, which I think is correct, is that bumaba yung productivity ng Amerika before the Great Depression. Bumaba, ibig sabihin, bumaba lahat ng pera kasi napunta lahat sa speculation. And hindi na sila nag-create ng bagong jobs. Kumikita na lang sila sa current jobs. So itong mga tao, although marami silang perang hawak, nilalagay nila sa stock market dahil gusto nila yung mga. So there are two sides to it. So going off from Chairman's comments, one of the major projects, sabi ni Franklin Roosevelt, kano ko bubuhayin to? Aside from these other things he did, sabi niya, kailangan mag-embark, kailangan magtayo ng major industrial projects ang Amerika. Bubuhayin natin ulit yung infrastruktura at bibigyan natin ng trabaho via major industrial projects. So nakita niya at the time that Franklin Roosevelt was nung nakaupo na siyang bilang presidentes, nakita niya yung buong southern area ng United States, nakalimutan ko na ilang taong affected dyan, was without electricity. Wala pong kuryente ang mga tao dyan. Kahit may kuryente na yung mga cities sa north, yung sa south, wala po. So, kandila pa rin ginagamit nila. So, sabi niya, kailangan bigyan natin ng kuryente. Bigyan natin ng magkakataong ma-experience sila yung kuryente. So, isang major infrastructure project na ginawa niya was the Trans-Valley Authority. Okay, the creation of the Trans-Valley Authority, which sought to create dams and build dams across the South to give electricity. So we have a video of that, and then Chairman can comment on that also. Okay, Ver.
FDR came from an aristocratic family. He was a cousin of Teddy Roosevelt. He was to the manor born, but he was also a man of the people.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born in Hyde Park, New York on January 30th, 1882. He was an only child. In 1900, Roosevelt entered Harvard University, where he became romantically involved with his fifth cousin.
Roosevelt had met Eleanor Roosevelt when they were children, and then they reconnected when he was a student at Harvard. They married quite young, and they had 5 children in a short amount of time.
FDR entered public service by running for and winning the New York State Senate seat in 1910. Later, President Wilson appointed him Assistant Secretary of the Navy.
In 1920, Roosevelt ran for vice president on the Democratic ticket. It was a devastating loss, one of the biggest landslides in history. In 1921, at age 39, FDR contracted polio, and it forever changed his life.
He had been vigorous as John F. Kennedy and being a great athlete, and suddenly he couldn't do any of that.
A lot of people were not aware of just how paralyzed he was. They knew that he had leg difficulties, but that he couldn't walk at all because there were no pictures of him, in that wheelchair.
In 1932, Roosevelt was elected President of the United States. The country was in the midst of the worst economic depression it had ever seen. Within his first 100 days in office, Roosevelt began the New Deal, a series of economic programs focused on relief, recovery, and reform.
Financial markets were in free fall. FDR came into office and said, we're going to have to deal with this. He said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. FDR knew exactly when to give voice to the American people, give them hope. And he had the genius of doing these radio fireside chats.
When Roosevelt came in, it was almost as though he turned things around just by the force of his personality.
By 1939, the world was on the brink of war. Hostilities in Europe and Asia were well underway.
FDR was a student of military affairs, so during the late 1930s, when he could see what was going on in Europe, he came up with the phrase that America will be the arsenal for democracy. He very skillfully played the isolationist, saying this is not America's war, but at the same time, in the back rooms of the White House, they were preparing the arsenal for democracy.
FDR was able to build support for the war by introducing the 4 freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. These became, in many ways, the ideological justification for the United States' entry on the side of the Allies.
On December 8, 1941, Congress declared war on Japan. Germany and Italy then declared war on the United States. America had entered World War II.
Anti-war sentiment dissolved overnight in this country, and we were very much behind the war.
It is the greatest single event in the history of mankind, World War II. It was fought on 6 of the 7 continents. 50 million people perished. The United States, Great Britain, and the Western Allies were aligned with Russia to try to crush Nazi Germany, Italy, and Japan.
In 1944, Roosevelt was in terrible health. Roosevelt ran for the fourth term because he believed the country needed a continuity of leadership. He himself said that you don't change horses in the middle of the stream. As long as the war was going on, Roosevelt believed he needed to stay in office.
On April 12, 1945, less than 3 months after beginning his fourth term, Franklin Roosevelt died at Warm Springs, Georgia. He was the longest-serving U.S. president in history.
He was the leader of this country, and when he died, no one was prepared for it. The war was winding down at that point. Just when there's a big light at the end of the tunnel, they lose their voice, their leader, the man who has been a symbol of all that is great about the country. There was that great phrase that when he died and the train was going back to Washington, there was a man standing there, a very poor man, and someone said, "Did you know him?" And he said, "I didn't know him, but he knew me." That kind of summed up FDR.
Okay, so that was a short biography of Franklin Roosevelt, no? Pero may isa ko pa kaming video na mix up natin yung yung video, yung TVA, yung gusto ko sana ipakita, because the TVA, just to give a brief, no, the Tennessee Valley Authority Act in 1933 was created by Roosevelt. Right after ito, he took office, 1932 siya. To oversee the construction of dams to control flooding, improve navigation, and create cheap electric power in the Tennessee Valley Basin. It became a federal corporation. The new agency was tasked to tackle important problems facing the valley, such as flooding, providing electricity to homes and businesses, and replanting forests. Other TVA responsibilities written in the act included improving travel on the Tennessee River and helping the region's business and farming. The TVA marked the first time that an agency was directed to address the total resource development needs of a major region. That's the first time. TVA was a challenge to take on in one unified development effort. The problems presented by floods, badly eroded lands, a deficient economy, and steady out migration. Kumbaga, umaalis yung mga tao from that region because wala silang trabaho. The most dramatic change in the valley life came from the electricity generated by the dams created. Electric lights and modern appliances made life easier and farms more productive. Electricity also drew industries to the region, providing desperately needed jobs. So yun yung gusto kong sabihin, no, for the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, because it showed the commitment and the understanding of Franklin Roosevelt to the problems of the United States at the time. Sabi niya, kailangan i-develop natin yung mga region. Kailangan i-develop natin yung mga around the United States. Hindi lang po certain cities, but yung buo. And doing that, giving Americans life. This area of the Tennessee Valley and parts of 6 other states, Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia. TVA's facilities for generating electric power include 29 hydroelectric dams, a pump storage plant, 11 coal-fired plants, 3 nuclear plants, and 4 combustion turbine installations. These facilities provide 27,000 megawatts of dependable generating capacity. This is today. TVA typically produces more than 130 billion kilowatt hours of electricity a year, making it the largest electric power producer in the United States today. And that was FDR's vision. That was FDR's creation of that. I just wanted to emphasize that to rebuild a nation, this is what you have to do on all sides. Chairman, you want to comment?
Yeah, exactly what you were saying. In order to be able to rebuild the nation, kung tatandaan natin, he took over the United States in a Great Depression. He had to take very definite steps towards correcting the flaws and the mistakes that were previously made by the previous administrations. One of the things that he did very consciously was to revert back to the principles of the Constitution of the United States. At itong ginawa niya ay napaka-importante kasi yun ang naging basihan niya kung paano niyang i-rebuild yung bansang Amerika. Tatandaan niyo po, ang bansang Amerika noong 1776 nagkaroon ng revolusyon at nagtatag sila ng isang bansa, isang republika, no? Right after the revolution of 1776. Ngayon, wala silang ekonomiya noon. Wala silang paano nilang itatayo ito? Ano ba ang kanilang magagawa, no? So, nagkaroon sila ng mga prinsipyo na sinundan na ilinagay at linatag nitong napakadakilang hero din ng Amerika. Ang pangalan niya Alexander Hamilton. Yung mga prinsipyong linatag ni Alexander Hamilton ay laban sa mga konsepto ng British. No? Tandaan nyo, nakipaglaban sila sa British dahil colony sila ng Great Britain. At ang kanilang itinatag ay laban dun sa mga prinsipyo ng mga British katulad ng Adam Smith, yung tinatawag na free market ni Adam Smith. Yun ang linabanan nila. At meron pang maraming prinsipyo. Pero ang best na magbabad tayo doon, fast forward tayo dito kay Franklin Roosevelt. Yun ang nasa ulo ni Franklin Roosevelt kung paano niyang bubuhayin ang bansang Amerika ulit. At nagawa niya ng paraan. Yung sinasabi ni Itos, yung Tennessee Valley Authority, magtatayo ng mga maraming mga dams. He constructed 2,000 dams during the time that he was president. Of course, he was president for 3 consecutive terms. For 4 years yon. Tapos,
yeah.
Yung pang-apat, namatay siya noong 1945.
Right.
Halos hindi niya naumpisahan. Pero, etong 3 terms na, nag-construct siya ng 2,000 dams. Ang dam po, katulad ng sinasabi ni Itos, imbakan ng tubig yan para makagawa ka ng irrigation para sa tanim mo at magawan mo ng paraan ang problema ng umaapaw, yung flooding. No? Kasi itong mga ilog, pag hindi mo minanage ang tubig dyan, pwedeng umapaw yan pagdagsa ng ulan, no? O ng isang bagyo, at maraming mapipinsalang tao at mapipinsala din na mga taniman. No? At ang napinsala yan, milyon-milyon ang nawawala. Kanya nagtayo siya ng mga dams. Ano pa ang magagawa ng dams? Pag meron kang dam, pwede kang gumawa ng kuryente. Kasi yung pag-manage mo ng bagsak ng tubig doon sa dam, naglalagay sila ng turbine para may generator, para may kuryente. Ibig sabihin, may kuryente yung mga paligid na mga bahay doon at mga pangangalakal. nabibigyan sila ng dagdag na kuryente, no? Importante ang kuryente sa lahat ng bagay, hindi lang sa ilaw. Importante ang kuryente sa pagsaka, di ba po? Di ba? Importante ang kuryente sa paggawa ng mga bomba ng tubig para maitulak mo ang tubig kung saan mo kailanganin, di ba? Isa pang napakagaling na ginawa ni Roosevelt diyan sa mga rivers na yan ay yung sabi niya para na-improve ang daluyan ng tubig. Yung ginagawa nila kasing pang-transport ng tao tsaka pang-transport ng mga goods itong mga rivers na ito. Katulad po sana ng ating Pasig at magagawa natin yan kung talagang nag-iisip tayo. Hindi lang for traveling of people, but you can also use it to transfer goods from one place to the other. No? Yan ang isa sa mga ginawa ni Roosevelt. Dahil dito sa malawak na ginawa niyang mga proyekto, at alam niya yun ang uumpisahan niya pagkapasok niya pa lang ng pagkapresidente, binuksan niya ang pag-eempleyo ng mga tao sa buong Amerika. In other words, sinabi niya, lahat kayong walang trabaho, pumunta na kayo sa mga ahensya, sa mga iba-ibang mga lugar dyan sa ating mga cities and apply for work. No? And within a matter of 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever, no? Sabi nga nila 3 araw lang eh. Pero siguro hindi naman 3 araw. Siguro let's say 1 week, 2 weeks, 11 million jobs ang na-create niya in 3 weeks time. No? Lahat yun walang trabaho nag-apply. At nagamit agad para mabilisan na umpisahan ang mga infrastructure projects ng kanyang gobyerno. Ganyan po yung ginawa ni Franklin Roosevelt. No? Meron pa siya mga ibang ginawa. Pero dahil dito, umandar ngayon ang industriya ng Amerikano. Umandar ang industriya sa gawaan ng bakal, gawaan ng mga fertilizer, gawaan ng mga iba-ibang klaseng factories. No? 1933 ito. So by 1938, nung pagpapasok na yung pangalawang term niya, lumalakas na ang bansang Amerika. Tatandaan natin, 1941, inatake ang Pearl Harbor ng mga Hapon. No? Pero noong 1938, nababalitaan na niya na dito sa Europa, meron isang tao na si Adolf Hitler na nag-uumpisa na siyang mag-angkin ng mga iba-ibang bansa. No? At wala nang ibang, dahil napakalakas ng ekonomiya nabaligtad ni Hitler yung kanyang ekonomiya at ginawa niyang war economy, no? Lahat ng kanyang mga kakayanan, tulad na rin sa bakal, itong mga croup, no? Ay pinasok niya sa gawaan ng sandatas, ng weapons. At napakalakas niya. Ngayon, etong si Roosevelt, nag-uumpisa pa siya. Pero gumagawa na siya ngayon sa Amerika ng mga goods like mga trucks. Nakakagawa na siya ng mga trucks, nakakagawa na ng tangke, at bandang huli nakakagawa na siya ng mga eroplano. So that by 1941, meron ng kakayanan ng Amerikano, no, pumarap sa kung sino man manggegera sa kanya at magpadala ng tulong sa mga iba-ibang bansa na ginegera ng mga Hapon o kaya ng mga Aleman. No? That is the strength of the US. So, kung babalikan natin, kung tutuusin mo, kung hindi dahil sa creative leadership ni Franklin Roosevelt nung nag-umpisa niya ng 1933, kung hindi dahil sa kanya, no, siguro ang mundo inangkin na nila Hitler at ng mga Hapon at iba na ang klase ang ating mundo ngayon. Pero dahil sa kanya, nagkaroon ng kakayanan ang mundo at ang kanyang mga kaalyado, ang Amerika at ang kanyang mga alyado, ihinto ang pag-a-advance ng mga Nazi at nila Hitler at yung mga ibang mga gustong angkinin ang buong mundo. No? We have to see it in that light. No? The significance of Franklin Roosevelt, no, to the rest of the world, and especially, by the way, I should add, especially to the Philippines. Habang lahat na ito nangyayari, si Franklin Roosevelt noong 1936, nangako siya sa Pilipinas na pagdating ng 10 taon, bibigyan niya ng independence ang bansang Pilipinas. Gagawin na niyang independent, hindi na sila magiging colony. 1936, pinangako niya ito, no, sa isang delegasyon na kumausap sa kanya. Bakit 10 taon? Kasi unang-una, papasok ang mundo sa gera, no, na hindi niya pwedeng gumawa ng mga ibang proyekto, kundi focus muna siya dito sa gera. Pangalawa, kinakailangan mabigyan niya ng sariling kakayanan ang bansang Pilipinas. Hindi basta-basta sabihin sa inyo, oh, Philippines, independent na kayo, bahala na kayo sa buhay nyo. Alis na kami. Hindi. Ang plano ni Roosevelt, yung kanyang mga inhinyero na ginamit niya doon sa Tennessee Valley Authority, sa development ng Amerika, ganyan. Yun din ang gagamitin niya para magtayo ng mga infrastruktura at sistema sa bansang Pilipinas. Para pag nabigyan na siya sa 1946 ng independence, umaandar na agad ang Pilipinas at hindi nagmumukhang kawawa. No? Dahil nalagyan na sila ng infrastructure na tinulungan ng Amerikano, nila Roosevelt. Yun ang plano niya. No? Ang sa sawing palad, siyempre, namatay siya noong 1945. Pero nailagay na rin yung mga ibang mga infrastruktura na kakailanganin. Ang nag-replace kay Roosevelt ay si Harry Truman, na hindi masyadong kaibigan ang bansang Pilipinas. No? Medyo pinahirapan tayo niyan. Pero hindi pa rin buwag yung pangako ni Franklin Roosevelt na bigyan tayo ng kalayaan in 1946. And that is how we were able to get our independence. But our economic programs and were initially in accordance with Franklin Roosevelt's direction were torpedoed by the people of Harry Truman. At unti-unti nasira yung ating kakayanan at nagkaroon tayo ng mga problema na hanggang ngayon may epekto sa ating buhay ngayon.
Okay, I wanted to add also just to para ano yung discussion. Yung in-establish po isa sa mga parang federal agencies na in-establish na ni Franklin Roosevelt na napakadami ay ang isa Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation sa US, tsaka yung Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay? That was also implemented here and established here during that time. He also established the National Power Corporation dito po sa Pilipinas. Tapos siya ang nag-promote and establish ang SSS, Social Security System, dito sa Pilipinas tulad sa United States. So marami pong benepisyo ang nilagay niya para sa mga tao, not just in the United States, and preparing us for independence tulad na sabi ni Chairman. Okay? He didn't say independent tayo sa 1946 pero wala siyang in-establish na mga institutions. Lahat po yan, nilagay po niya sa Pilipinas rin. At pag nakita niyo yung history ng NAPOCOR, ng SSS, sasabihin nila established in 1933, 1934, during the time of Franklin Roosevelt. Okay? So good. That concludes our discussion on the Roosevelts at hopefully pinakita po natin yung diferensya sa... Okay.
Dadagdag ko lang bago natin tapusin ang usapan natin ngayon gabi ethos. Ito pong bakit po namin ginikwento sa inyo si Franklin Roosevelt at sinasabi namin sa inyo kung ano yung mga ginawa niya. Hindi pa kompleto yan, marami pa rin silang ginawang ano. Pero ang pinalabas lang namin yung mga salient points na kinakailangan matandaan natin, no? Bakit po? Tatandaan niyo po, ang ginawa po ni Roosevelt when he entered as president, he entered in a period of Great Depression. At nakita niyo po yung mga litrato doon na ang dami pong naghihintay na walang trabaho. Marami pong mga pictures na ganyan, no? At hindi lang po 24%, kanya sabi ko, siguro yung mga mga baguhan, hindi nila alam talaga yung talagang history ng US kung saan nanggaling, no? Pero napakabigat po ng problema nila, yung Great Depression. Nasa history books yan at ito ang pinakamabigat na sa kasaysayan ng mundo at ng bansang Amerika na tumama sa bansang Amerika na sa ekonomiya nila. Pero ngayon kasalukuyan nangyayari itong COVID saka itong sitwasyon sa bansang Amerika. Ang mga numero po, ang mga statistics po na lumalabas sa bansang Amerika ay higit pang masama kaysa sa nung Great Depression. Higit pang mas masama. Iyan po ang hinaharap ngayon ng bansang Amerika. Ngayon, dito po sa atin, ito pong nararanasan natin na ilan buwan, about 20 months, close to 20 months of COVID, lockdowns, and economic depression, no? Is also the worst in our history of our economic and political history dito po sa Pilipinas. Hindi po natin alam kung itong mga nasa gobyerno natin ngayon at yung mga gustong pumasok na maging presidente ng ating bansa, hindi po natin alam kung naiintindihan nila ang tunay na kalagayan ng bansang Pilipinas. Baka hindi po nila napapag-aralan mabuti o iba ang layunin nila. No? Kasi yung mga iba, wala silang pakialam kung saan papunta ang Pilipinas, basta makapasok sila at pwedeng mangurakot. No? Yung iba naman, sana, ang kanilang intensyon, isalba nila ang mga mamamayang Pilipino sa kahirapan. Ngunit, alam ba nila kung paano? No. Kanya po natin sinasabi ito na tungkol kay Franklin Roosevelt para mabigyan po ang taong bayan, pati na rin itong mga tao na malapit sa mga kandidato, mabigyan sila ng ideya kung ano ang pwede nilang itulong o i-advise sa mga liderato natin na darating sa darating na taon. Dahil kung hindi tayo gagalaw ng tama in accordance with what Franklin Roosevelt had done, the same principle, the same spirit, the same quality of thinking that he had in order to reverse the situation in the US and in effect take on the leadership of the free world. If it was not that kind of thinking that we have to try to emulate now, our country will deteriorate and disintegrate into a level of existence that I cannot even imagine. The Republic will lose its integrity as a nation. And chaos might set in. And the only people that will be leading this country are what you call warlords. Those that have little enclaves in the country and using arms, using shabu, in order to keep their small economies running. Yan po ang pwede natin harapin kung ang mamumuno sa atin ay hindi natututo sa kasaysayan. Ito po ang ating reason why we share this with you, which I think is very, very important. Salamat po.
Okay, so now we will read the text messages and reactions from our social media and our text and our YouTube. Palalo po natin, in the interest of free speech, we will read them as is, but the opinions and expressions do not necessarily reflect that of the hosts or the KDP channel. All right, there, let's go. Angela Bolivar, hi, gandang gabi po sa inyo. Long live Philippines. Freddy Oredina, present. Congress has oversight function to all executive departments relating to use of funds related to GAA, power of the purse. Nakalimutan ba ni Duterte na nasa loob siya ng sistema at nagwawala siya kung imbestigan ng DOH and under the executive branch? Ava Kylie Rue. Hello, magandang gabi po sa inyo, Sir Butch and Sir Ito sa KDP. Mabuhay po kayo. More power and God bless, and watching here in Okinawa, Japan. Gloria Siebert. Guten Abend, Sir Butch, Sir Itos. Mabuhay, watching from Germany with love. Mabuhay po kayo. Filimon de Vera. Good evening, Sir Butch and Sir Itos. Sefar Zalmoran, magandang gabi po sa inyo. Mabuhay ang KDP. Mailing, good evening KDP, watching from Bukidnon. Jaime Martin, magandang gabi po sa inyo. Mga Sir William Laguno, magandang gabi po. Sir Butch, Sir Itos, at sa mga KDP, mabuhay po. Christopher Cruz, privatization is fascism with a sad smile. Quote, they who seek to establish systems of government based on the regimentation of all human beings by a handful of individual rulers call this a new order. It is not new and it is not order. Correct. Federio Candido Salito, magandang gabi po sa inyo, Sir Butch, Aidas, at sa lahat po na nakasubaybay sa KDP. God bless po, watching from Riyadh, KSA. John Romeo, good evening. PM, good evening po sa lahat. KTM Malyari, sino po ang presidente nyo? Chairman, you want to take that?
Yeah. Sino ba? Ngayon po wala pa pong klaro. Dahil palagay ko hindi pa lahat nagdedeklara kung sila'y tatakbong presidente o hindi. Pero madali lang po mahanapin kung sinong presidente ng susundan ng KDP. Alam niyo po yung prinsipyo namin, no? Basahin niyo po sa website natin kung ano ang mga prinsipyo na sinusundan ng KDP. No? That we are a party of principle and not of convenience. Meaning, ang pagsasama ay dapat prinsipyo ang pinagsasamahan at hindi lang pamparami. Yung convenience, pamparami lang. Pero yung dapat, bago ka magparami, kailangan pare-pareho ang isip nyo para sa ating bansa. Para ano ang gagawin, para ano ang susundan na prinsipyo sa pagpapaunlad at susolbahan ng suliranin ng ating bansa. Then, ang sinasabi natin also, we are a party of ideas and not of personalities. No? Ang importante po ay yung mga tao pong nag-iisip kung ano-ano ang mga solusyon na importanteng gagawin sa ating bansa. Hindi po yung hahatak ka lang ng mga kung sino-sino na kilala, popular, pero wala naman maidadagdag na kaisipan sa ikauunlad ng bansa at ikabubuti ng ating mga mamamayan. No? We are a party of ideas and not of personalities. Yan po ang importante. Ngayon, hanapin po natin kung sino yung ganitong klaseng tao. Ano pa po ang ating mga pinagkakaisahan sana, no? Na gusto natin na makita sa isang kandidato, isang grupo. Ito po, sabihin natin. Ito. For example, pinaglalaban po natin, we fight for truth, katotohanan. Kung walang katotohanan, wala pong katarungan. At kung wala pong katarungan, wala pong kapayapaan. At kung wala pong kapayapaan, paano natin maumpisahan ang kaunlaran? Yan po ang isang pag-iisip na importante. Malalim po yan, pero sa darating pong eleksyon, ang kinakailangan natin, hindi lang yung mga kandidatong pasayaw-sayaw sa entablado, no? Ang kinakailangan po natin dito sa mga taong to, yung may integridad, yung paniniwalaan mo. At hindi lang pagka-presidente, kundi pagka-leader. Iba po yun. Madali pong magka-presidente dahil andyan na po yung smartmatic eh. No? Kayang-kaya nilang bilhin, lalo na yung mga oligarko. Pero to be a leader takes a lot more. Kasi at mararamdaman ng taong bayan kung sino ang leader. Dapat, kung magsasama-sama at maghahanap tayo ng tao, ang dapat natin hahanapin ay isang patriotiko dedicated to the upliftment of the quality of life of all our countrymen now suffering from this crisis. Yung pong tao na talagang seryoso, na hahanap ng paraan para maiangat ang buhay ng lahat ng mamamayang Pilipino. Parang napakabigat isipin na may tao palang ganyan. Meron po, maski na hindi niya pa alam eksakto kung paano gagawin. Pero kung lahat ng ang kanyang budhi, kung lahat ng kanyang konsyensya, lahat ng kanyang kakayanan, lahat ng tapang na kaya niya, gagamitin niya para dito sa pag-aangat ng kalidad ng kabuhayan ng mamayang Pilipino. Palagay ko, yan ang leader na susundan ng mga tao para tulungan siyang gawin ang nararapat gawin. Kung magkakaroon ng mga samahan para magawa ito, dapat magkakaisa itong mga samahan na ito. Hindi lang para manalo ang kandidato, which we call political expedience. Dapat ang pagsasama nila ay merong panunumpa na isasalang nila ang buhay nila sa salita at sa gawa for the benefit of the poor, para sa kapakanan po ng mga mahihirap at ng mga kinalimutan na Pilipino. For the forgotten Filipinos, as well as those who come after us, that they will continue the building of an even stronger republic worthy of a proud Filipino nation. Yung pong sinabi ko, hindi po mahirap ispelengin. Naiintindihan niyo na po. Tignan niyo po dito sa lahat ng mga tumatakbo at nagpapanggap na gustong maging presidente. Tingnan niyo po yung kanilang niluloob, ang kanilang kakayanan, ang kanilang integridad. May bahid ba silang korupsyon? May bahid ba silang pagkasinungaling? Meron ba silang history, kasaysayan na manloloko? Meron ba silang kasaysayan na bolero? Kung umang sila na gustong maging presidente, pwede ba sipain nyo na lang yung mga yan? Lalong-lalo na dito sa panahon ng krisis ng ating bansa. Hindi natin kailangan yung mga mandurugas na yan. Hanapin nyo sila at palagay ko magsama-sama tayo, mahahanap din natin yan. Yan po yung sagot natin dito sa isang katanungan. Kung meron na ba tayong kandidato?
Okay. Ace Calora. Good evening, Sir Butch and Sir Ito sa FB Live watching from Tagum City, Davao del Norte. Kaya pala akala nila private ang gumawa ng kaguluhan. The truth is government ang gumawa ng conflict sa sariling bansa para lalo silang kumita sa ginagawa nilang baril. Ray Isagire, bakit po na-crisis ang capitalist economic system? Bakit nangyayari ito? Paano nangyayari ito? Capitalist economic system.
Ngayon po lahat po ng bansa sa buong mundo, dahil po dito sa lockdowns na nangyayari, sinesarado po nila ang mga pangangalakal, hindi po pwedeng lumabas yung mga tao at hindi po nila pinapayagan magkaroon ng regular operation sa mga negosyo natin, no? Sa buong mundo po, no? Kanya kumukulapso po ang world economy as we speak now.
Okay, Wilfredo Opiniano, good evening po sa magtatay, mabuhay po. Maria Teresa Corpus Balburias. Good evening, Sir Bochaitas from Cebu City. God bless you. Sunday history class. Thank you. Ting Love, Artadi Makalinaw. Yan, history ng PhilAm ang magandang pinag-uusapan. Camille Almerol. Good evening mga Katipuneros, Katipuneras. God bless us all. Mark Claro. Good evening, Sir Botsaitas Valdes. Stay safe. God bless always. Watching from Quezon City. Thank you, Mark. Emma Mendoza. Good evening po sa lahat. Watching from San Jose del Monte. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Pagpalain tayo ni Adonai. Melissa Nanip. Good PM. God bless to both of you. Anthony Andres. Cleveland, Ohio. I was surprised in disbelief to learn that you're supporting Pacquiao for president, Mr. Valdes. Instead of supporting him, why not run for president yourself? You are 20 times more intelligent than him. Your knowledge and familiarity with the problems that beleaguered our impoverished country and the solutions that we suggest to extinguish these problems are beyond reproach. I am quite sure that if you engage those presidential pretenders in an open debate, you will wallop them hands down. Everybody knows that boxing is his passion and being a senator is his part-time occupation. He became senator because of his popularity and deep pocket and nothing else. Just review his track records in Congress and Senate and you can conclude he is not capable for the highest office. Have you ever thought of Chiqui Pacquiao? She will dwarf Imelda Marcos when it comes to extravagance if she becomes First Lady. In spite of the facts that we may differ in opinion, my respect to you and your program will not diminish one bit. Thank you for reading my opinion. More power and to your program, KD.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Ace Calora, imperialista si Roosevelt, kaya kinuha nila ang kampanya Balanggiga kapalit ng hindi ayon sa mga kababaihan. Yes, we're talking about Theodore Roosevelt po. Ibang-iba po yung Franklin Roosevelt na 1930s. Yung Theodore Roosevelt po na didiscuss po natin, 1901. Benjamin Gutierrez, opo, okay tumakbo kayong presidente, Sir Butch, kaya naman punuan ng KDP hanggang Senate. Kaysa ipayubayan natin na wala namang mawawala ka, Butch. Kaya suporta tayo sa iba. Ernie Ocampo, good evening mga sirs. Mabuhay Sir Itos Valdes and to Sir Chairman Prof. Butch Valdes. Mabuhay ang KDP, mabuhay Pilipinas. Glenn Bonilla, ayon sa salita ng Diyos sa Biblia, darating ang araw ng lahat ng tao ay hindi makakabili o makakapagbenta kapag wala silang, quote, hatak ng halimaw, the mark of the beast, or 666. Ang nakikita na natin ito ngayon sa ating harapan, unti-unti sinasanay na tayo sa kailangan mayroong kang QR code bago makapasok sa isang establishment. At sa mga susunod na taon, kapag wala kang patunay na ikaw ay nabakunahan, ay hindi ka rin papayagang makapasok sa mga establishment. Maging sa inyong trabaho sa takot na baka may dala kang Saan ba siya? May dala kang ang Book of Revelation ay signified revelation. Kaya hindi ito ini-interpret ng literal. Ang tatak ng kanang kamay na ang hulog ang sumusunod sa Antikristo sa inyong mga gawa at ang tatak sa noo ay ang pagsunod sa Kanya at iyong isip. Narito na ang Antikristo po hindi pa ma-reveal kung sino siya hanggang pagbabalik ng ating Pangulong Hesukristo. Magsisisi sa inyong kasalanan at magtatanggap mo ang kaloob na banal ng Espiritu na siya magtuturo sa inyo sa lahat ng katotohanan at siya din ang selyo ng Diyos sa iyo. Nakatibayan na ikaw ay ligtas na. Okay. Eliza Bautista, Cory, meaning the started of Roosevelt's time. Hindi ko alam. Good evening, Sir Butch and Sir Itos. Buong diary, tignan po nila ngayon sa Australia, gumagamit na ng military ang government para sapilin ang bakuna ng mga tao. Pwede rin yan mangyari sa atin. Dapat handa na tayo. Correct. Cesar Soberano, can't be absent in Lesson in History 101. A true account of what really happened from a patriotic perspective. Francis Ayalin, good evening, Sir Butch and Sir Itos. Evening. Katipon PJ, Rockefeller and Carnegie, two oligarchs who also corrupted medical science and the reason why diseases are addressed in treating the symptoms. So pharma can gain profit from all these maintenance medicines, chemo, drugs, and killer vaccines instead of teaching patients how to make immune system strong, which is the German new medicine way. John Cyril Onato. Good evening, Sir Butch and Sir Itos ng KDP. Keep it up and God bless. Watching here from Capiz, mga sirs. Mga sirs, doon sa bansang Japan, pinatigil nila doon ang pagpapabakuna sa kanilang mamamayan dahil yung health experts nila doon ay may na-discover na yung Moderna bakuna ay naglalaman ng stainless steel. Kumakalat na yung balitang yon, yung Moderna, tinigil na nila. Kasi may mga tinatawag na di ko alam kung stainless steel yun, pero may mga elements ng iron or graphene oxide na sinasabi na nila. So tinigil po nila yung pagpapabakuna dun sa Moderna. Di ko alam kung dito pinatigil na nila. Hindi ko talaga alam dito. Kailangan kumita pa rin ng Department of Health siguro. Ana Galvez, blessed evening po to Sir Butch Valdes and Sir Itos Valdes. Mabuhay po kayo. Very informative channel is KDP. Mabuhay po kayo. Ronald Nanoy, good evening Sir Butch, Sir Itos at sa lahat ng viewers ng KDP watching from Santo Tomas, Batangas. Maximino Comia, dilawan na po ba si Digong? Kasi bakit di pa rin makulong yung mga DAP kriminal na Napoles lang ang nakakulong? Yes, Disbursements Allocation Program. Butch Abad, tsaka yung iba pa, hindi nakulong. Tama. Chris Jose, ang lalim bakit ekonomiya ang usapin? Ba't di naman sa amin? Kung ekonomiya na ngilan lang ang nakinabang sa lahat. Ganda po ng topic. Vicente Victoriano, watching from Iloilo City. God bless us all. Raf XB, greetings mga katipon. Rome Ramirez, good evening ka Butch. Katipon PJ, Glass-Steagall Act separates the commercial and speculation operations of bankers, making the casino-type speculation controlled, and it pushes the physical economic growth of a sovereign country. Franklin Roosevelt just followed the true American system of economy established after the American Revolution by Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Marquis de Lafayette, and other forefathers. The four freedoms of Abraham Lincoln, especially the freedom from hunger and fear, is protected by the American economic system. Auspicia Acosta, di ba sabi kukuhanin ng mga Illuminati ang mga ari-arian na pera ng mga tao? You will own nothing as they are telling, kaya wala nang kwenta ang life. No future, just they will serve us in our doors what we are doing to eat. Oh my God, very unreasonable. Yan po ang great reset na gusto nilang i-implement. Good. Virginia Malonzo, good evening po Sir Butch at Sir Itos. Katipon PJ, magandang gabi po Sir Butch Valdes and Bro Ethos. Long time no see, regards to both of you mga Katipon. Shoutout po sa Katipon natin, sa ka-patriot natin, si Katipon Marlon ng Laloma QC. Tuwing linggo na rin po siya lagi nakatutok sa Ating Katipunan at iba pang mga programa natin sa Katipunan channel. May God Almighty always protect us and guide us in all our fight for freedom from the oligarchs and no to force mass vaccination. Correct. Jacqueline De Vera, Sir Butch Aidas, ang tagal na ng KDP programa tungkol sa development. Bakit wala man lang government official na mag-adapt ng inyong KDP program? Which is majority of us Filipinos' dreams is to have a stable economy and enjoy economic bonanza and enjoy a peaceful life. Para walang drug pusher, kidnapper, technical smuggling, and corruption sa government, etc. Sir Butch and Sir Ethos.
Ano kasi, yung mga gustong tumakbo, kanya po hindi nila pinapakinggan. Kasi po, sa amin pong palagay, ang mga itunusudak natin ay mga prinsipyo. Itong mga ito, karamihan sa kanila, na po sila pumapasok sa gobyerno at tumatakbong mga iba-ibang posisyon. Ang nasa utak po nila ay paano silang kikita. At malalaki po ang kinikita nitong mga ito, bilyon-bilyon po. Yung mga senador natin, tsaka mga congressman, in the hundreds of millions ang kinikita niyan kada taon. Yung mga nasa taas na gobyerno natin, yung mga kabinete, tsaka yung nasa taas, bilyon-bilyon po. Limpak na bilyon ang kinikita niyan. Kanya hindi natin maitulak ang mga prinsipyong layunin, no? Dahil masyadong malaki ang kanilang tukso sa pera. Dito sa Kongreso natin, ginawa na nilang hanap buhay ng pamilya ang pagkapolitiko. Yan pong yung pong mga pork barrel ng mga kongresista, tumatanggap po yan ng 100 milyon kada taon na sinasabi pork barrel, pero hindi na po na-examine ng COA yan. No? Kung man may examine sila, hindi naman masyadong detalye dahil inuuwi na nilang mahigit ng kalahati na. So parang negosyo ng pamilya yan. Pag tapos na yung termino ng isa, papasok naman yung asawa, tapos papasok naman yung anak, tapos pasok na naman yung matanda. No? Ganyan na rin sa Senado. No? May kita nyo sa Senado, gaano katagal ba silang nandyan? No? Siguro mga 20 years, nandyan sila. Between 12 to 20 years, nandyan sila. Di ba? Na nasa Senado. Biro mo sa Senado magkano kinikita nila. Ang pork barrel daw niyan, I think 200 or 300 million pesos a year na eh. No? 20 years ka dyan, di siyempre, pagkatapos mo, yung anak mo naman, o yung asawa mo, o yung kapatid mo, it's a family business. We have to destroy this whole thing. No? At meron po tayong pamamaraan, maski na hindi po revolusyon o kakayanin po. Pero importante po, yung nakaupong na presidente ay may competence at may lakas ng loob gawin ang tama para sa taong bayan.
Nelly Sestara, thank you for your program, Prof. Butch and Mr. Ethos. For me, FDR leadership can be a good read and be a guide for those who want to enter politics, especially aspiring president. Correct. Teresa Pacuba, Sai po Sir Ethos, Sir Butch, God bless po, watching from Australia. That's it. Okay. Thank you for all your messages. That concludes our program for tonight. Nakamute yata si Chairman.
Okay, sa ngalan po ng ating mga katipon dito sa ating katipunan at sa mga gagaling na staff ng DZXL Radio Mo Nationwide, kami po ay pansamantalang nagpapaalam at nagpapasalamat na sinamahan niyo kami ngayon, ang ora de peligro ng ating bayan at ng buong mundo dito po sa ating katipunan. Hanggang sa linggo po muli, mga katipon, 7 to 9 p.m. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you.